Along with California, it's also primary day for 6 other states across the country. New Jersey, Mississippi, Iowa, Montana, South Dakota, and New Mexico are holding local elections. A total of 78 congressional races are happening today, and many of those seats could impact the balance of power in the House after this year's midterms. CBS News political reporter Adam Brewster joins me now. Hey, Adam, thanks so much for being here. So we know you've been following all of these races. What exactly should we be watching for in these congressional primaries today?
Right. Well, within the House of Representatives, Caitlin, we know this. There are districts that are safe. We kind of know whether Democrats or Republicans are going to win them. And then you have a subset of races that will be competitive. There are roughly 20 races that are holding primaries today that are expected to have competitive seats in November, according to the Cook Political Report. So a lot of races that we'll be talking about in November, and those spread the map. Many of them are in California. You also have some, a few in New Jersey and Iowa, a couple, in Montana and down in New Mexico. But, some of the races within there that are worth watching, certainly you have in Montana, former Trump administration official Ryan Zinke trying to win his Republican primary tonight. And then in California, one of the races to keep an eye on is David Valadao. He's one of the Republicans who voted to impeach former President Trump. This is the first test of a Republican who did that. California has a sort of unique primary system. The top 2 vote getters advance in that race. So there will likely be a Democrat emerging among those top 2. And then we've seen some Democratic groups try to elevate the fact that Valadao voted for impeachment in hopes that that may turn some conservatives against him to vote for some of the other Republicans who are running in that race. So that will be one to keep a close eye on out in California tonight.
Interesting races in California, to be sure. I also want to ask you, though, about Iowa, a place that you've spent a lot of time reporting. And there you have one-term Congresswoman Abby Finkenauer, who people may remember. She's really hoping to challenge Chuck Grassley, who, of course, is Iowa's 88-year-old Republican senator from Iowa. Given what you know about the state and all the reporting that you've done there, do Democrats have a realistic chance of flipping that seat?
Well, it was funny talking to Democrats in Iowa about this time 3 years ago when I went there. And they were insistent, Iowa's a purple state, Iowa's a purple state, Iowa's a purple state. And when 2020 came around, that argument certainly lost a little bit of its weight. We have seen Iowa, which was a battleground state for many years, drift to the right during the Trump years and since former President Trump left office. And so it will be a tough uphill battle for whichever Democrat emerges in that race. Now, Abby Finkenauer, former Congresswoman, she was one of the youngest people ever elected to Congress, has tried to make this sort of generational argument against Chuck Grassley, saying, hey, it's time for a change. But she's facing a tough primary against retired Admiral Michael Franken, someone who ran for the U.S. Senate as a Democrat in 2020. He did not win the nomination. There were certainly more than one Iowa Democrat, in 2020 who had said, man, we wish we would have known about this guy earlier because he would have been a great candidate in the 2020 cycle. We'll see who wins that battle between them tonight. Chuck Grassley, we should mention, does have a primary challenge against a state senator in Iowa. It is expected that Grassley will be able to survive that and go on as he tries to seek an 8th term in the United States Senate. There's been a lot of absentee voting from Republicans. It'll be interesting to see, more so certainly than 2018. It'll be interesting to see the impact that has on races on the Republican side up and down the ballot.
And what about New Mexico? I mean, New Mexico's governorship is seen by some Republicans as potentially an opportunity to flip. How's that race shaping up so far?
Right. So as we look to November, right, we will focus a lot on the battleground states, the most competitive races. And for Democratic seats currently held by Democrats that Republicans are hoping to flip, right, they will be most closely looking at Pennsylvania, at Michigan, at Wisconsin, but sort of in the next bucket of competitive races where if things are going well for Republicans, as they seem to be at this point in the cycle, they're going to be looking at New Mexico as a seat where they're hoping to flip. Democratic Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham has faced some scandals. Now, she and her allies have said, look, she has raised teacher pay, she's cut taxes, she repealed the state's criminalization on abortion. She has a lot of significant accomplishments to run on. There are several Republicans running for the chance to take her on in November. Mark Ronchetti, a former television meteorologist, has sort of been the leading fundraiser going into that. He was the Republican nominee for the United States Senate in New Mexico in 2020. He lost that race by 6 points. If he emerges tonight, he is someone who Republicans feel good about as able to give Lujan Grisham a run for her money in November, certainly depending on how the climate is when Election Day rolls around.
Yeah, big question about what that climate will look like for people like her. So, Adam, midterm elections are 5 months away from tomorrow. How are the parties fundraising, these fundraising groups and kind of outside groups and just party groups feeling about their prospects at this point? How would you say?
Certainly, Republicans are feeling good about their prospects right now. You are going to continue to see them point at the things that they think will help them. The economy, the border, crime, things of that nature. And when you are not the party in power, all you have to do is pose the question, are you better off today than you were at this point 2 or 4 years ago? And in this case, that is something you're going to hear Republicans talk about. They are going to only focus on the issues that they think help them, that they think voters are upset with. Certainly the economy will be one of those main issues. And then among Democrats, they know that time is running out, and they know that a party in power often faces headwinds during a midterm election, particularly that first midterm when a party is in power in the White House. But there are some outside groups who are saying, you've seen this talk between do Democrats need to focus on economic issues? Should they be talking about, some of the more extreme elements of the Republican Party and pointing to the January 6 hearings? Those are going to kick off this week. And we heard today from one of the major Democratic groups, Priorities USA, who said their research shows it's a false choice for Democrats. They need to be talking about the economy to certainly help with their persuadable voters. But they're seeing issues of Democrats not feeling motivated, not feeling like enough is at stake. And they think that there should also be talk about things like January 6th, heading down the campaign trail to make sure people understand what is at stake in this election from their perspective.
Motivating voters is a key issue for all of these campaigns in turning out their bases of support in a midterm. If it's a primary day, you can bet Adam Brewster is on it. So, Adam, thank you so much for your reporting and your time.
Thanks, Caitlin.